As to the speakers to join me here, as to Cecilia, Deputy Mayor for Economic Development and Tourism of Florence, André Sobczak, Vice President of Nantes Metropole and Chair of the Economic Development Forum, Santtu from Bruun, Deputy Mayor for Innovation of Helsinki, Fabrizio, Colimberti, Policy Officer at DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission, and Javier, Scientific Officer on Urban Development at Joint Research Center of the European Commission to join me here for this session. There are enough chairs for everybody, so we can sit where you want. It's like the game of chairs, you know, the musical chairs. Welcome to the panel debate on how to develop local innovation ecosystem. As you know, cities are the places where most of the challenges of our time are happening, and fostering innovation and economic development is one of the most important challenges of our time. Local governments act as brokers of innovation, making cities enabling platforms for startups, innovators, small and medium enterprises willing to cooperate for creating social and economic development. But at the same time, the local governments play also a key role in connecting different local innovation ecosystems in different cities at European and global level. So at local level, we see that new models of collaborations between the public sector, the private sector, the local communities are emerging, and local authorities need to be prepared for this, to be active players in this dynamic, and elected representatives, civic officials need to have new tools to understand this dynamics and animate the cooperation among all these players. So what we are going to do today is to explore the different strategies that cities followed to promote and foster local innovation ecosystems, but also the current and future challenges of the sector and how European Union and cities can collaborate to promote integrated urban development. I will start with Cecilia. She is Deputy Mayor for Economic Development here in Florence. In a national context of slow recovery from crisis, why Florence can be considered as an exception, and how Florence is fostering the collaboration between the public and private sector?
So, as we say, Florence is a peculiar city with a strong Renaissance tradition, but we are experiencing also a very significant change from the technological point of view, and also from the infrastructures. And it's our responsibility to look for innovation in order to face the challenges posed by the economic environment of the territory. Last year, we set up an agreement with the stakeholders dealing with innovation in Florence, aimed to achieve a synergic activities to stimulate the development of Florence innovation ecosystem. The partners are both private and public, and the aim is common: to create fertile ground for the arrival of new business in the city, and to ensure that the various existing projects do not overlap, but complement and reinforce each other. Another example of collaboration between public and private sector is we can find in the tourism sector, because we sign an agreement to support the Congress sector and to promote the quality of tourism between the municipality of Florence, the metropolitan city, the Chamber of Commerce and the University of Florence, in order to implement shared actions and optimize efforts and resources to enhance the sector of tourism, in order also to delocalize tourist flows. We are looking for a private group, for a private subject that can help us in doing this. So, we are making a team in order to help also our city to sustain and improve citizen quality of life, because the tourists must be an opportunity for our cities and not a problem. But we have every year 14 million of tourists in Florence, and so we have to be able, also with the help of private sector, to delocalize these tourists, and also to help other territories around Florence. to receive these tourists. So we are really making a collaboration between public and private in order to improve our quality life.
It's also collaboration with other public actors around Florence, which is really important and it's really original in the Italian landscape. What about Nantes? What are the main actors of the local innovation ecosystem, and how the city is fostering the collaboration with them and among them?
Yeah, what we do in Nantes is very similar, and I found also a lot of things that have been presented in the keynote speech that we also do in Nantes as well. So I think there's also a common way of today to recognize again the role of public actors and of cities in the field of innovation, which maybe was not the case 10 or 20 years ago, where we thought that it was indeed a responsibility only of the private sector. So we do similar things in order to bring together the different stakeholders. What is also important for us in Nantes is the fact that we don't see innovation or economic development as an end in itself. It has to be in line with our political strategy, so we are very much engaged in the different transitions, environmental transition, social transition, creating jobs and so on, and we try to explain to our citizens that everything that we invest in innovation will have a concrete impact on the local level, which is important. I was struck by the presentation when it was said that the iPhone, for example, actually it was to a huge extent invented thanks to publicly funded innovation, and today we all know that it's not always the case even that these kind of companies pay their taxes. So there's also a question of what is the impact of the investment we make in innovation, and we have to be sure, I think, towards our citizens that something comes back to the ground, be it in terms of jobs or better social or environmental conditions, for example. So this is what we try to do. We also have this idea with working together with the region around us, because we don't want to see our city as selfish and just bringing the added value to the city. We also have to interact, and it's also, of course, the political debate currently in France and other parts between the rich cities and the poorer areas around them, which cannot be a solution for the future. So we have to do this, and what we did is we need to identify certain sectors which are important for us. So here you can see them. We have identified together with the private and public actors in our region certain areas that reflect our values and our strengths, and also that are linked to the different transitions that we want to influence. So you can see that we work a lot on industries. We are quite lucky in Nantes to have quite a lot of industries even within the city, which is not so usual, and it has been seen as a problem for many times, because of course there is an environmental impact also on this. But on the other hand, it also guarantees our people to get jobs, and also in all kinds of fields. We don't want Nantes to be only a city for people that work in the innovation sector that are very high skilled. We also need to offer jobs for everybody, and industries, it's something which is very important, where we want to invest, be it on aerospace and the maritime sector. And then everything which is linked to health. In the city of Nantes, we are currently developing a new university hospital. It's the biggest university hospital in France that is being built currently, and around this we want to develop a whole economic sector about health and to link it with the food sector, because Nantes has a long tradition of the food sector, and we are convinced that we can create bridges between health and food, which also would be an original point of view. We don't think that we can compete with other European cities on having the best companies, on a lot of research on the best medicine, for example, but we can think that food can be a driver for having more health also for the people, so creating these bridges. And then we have two transversal areas that are also important, that are in line with our values, so the link with the culture and creativity industries. which is very important, and the digital sector that we see not really as a sector as themselves, but more as something which is transversal, which we try to develop. And all this we try to do it again in cooperation with also the regional level, because as a French city, you could say that innovation and economic development, it's not really up to us to decide on it. It's more, from a legal point of view, the responsibility of the region, but we are convinced that we need to play our role. We have a strength, and we can really contribute to innovate on all these different levels.
Then also the way you transformed some former industrial buildings, such as the former biscuit factory, the that became the Unique, which is one of the most interesting cultural hub, I think, in France and in Europe. So it's a good example of how creative industries are really a relevant part of the economic future of Nantes. In Helsinki, Santtu, what are the most characteristic elements of the local innovation ecosystem, and how the collaboration among the different actors is managed in some way also by the public sector? What is the role that the city is having on this process?
Okay, thank you. Just to start with, it's an honor to be called Vice Mayor. Unfortunately, I'm the Vice Director of Economic Development, responsible for urban innovation and ecosystem development.
Wish you in the future will become Vice Mayor.
Our Vice Mayor is somewhere in here or arriving soon. But Helsinki, Finland has always been very innovative place. If you look at the development of Finland in the last 100 years, it's a story of innovation from one of the poorest countries in the world or in Europe to become one of the most prosperous countries in Europe and the world, currently ranking third most innovative country in the world. And it is really a story of social innovation, basically that of equal education. And if you look at the innovation ecosystem in Helsinki at the moment, the basis is still the same. It is very much about high-class education, equal opportunities for all, trust. It is very much a trust-based society. And without this one, you can't really have an ecosystem. It is all based on people. It is all based on talent. Once you have the talent, you can start building an environment or an ecosystem where innovation happens. And doesn't seem to be working. Anyways. Yep, okay, perfect. And what we're doing is, or have been doing it for quite a while now, is moving from narrow traditional innovation policies towards open innovation policy and something that is focusing on building an ecosystem. Currently, there's an estimate that 96% of global innovation are made in ecosystems, no longer within single organizations. And what we look at is three layers or focus areas in this one. One is the open city, which is how city functions towards its citizens and towards corporations within the city. It is very much about empowering citizen-led development. It is engaging citizens in innovation via living labs and so on. Another one is building an open innovation ecosystem. That is looking at the city as an organism, looking at what kind of actors we have, how those cooperate, and then if there's something missing, we can help create something there, or we can breed a culture or a way of operating so that we bring together the city, the academia, and the private organizations and the companies. And the third one is building city as a platform. This, I think, is one of the most challenging and at the same time most important part of how cities can help innovation. And we do this by leveraging all our assets, basically infrastructure and services, in a way that promote innovation and commercialization of innovation. This can be innovative procurement, hackathons, challenges, innovation platforms where we open services for companies to come and test their products, get their first commercial touch, get the feedback, does their innovation work, so that they can show that their innovation really works in real environment. Of course, we try to offer market references for companies. And basically, the idea is to make Helsinki world's leading testbed for innovation. We know that if we look at the innovation on a global level, we will never be the end market. We are far too small city and far too small country. But we can be the place where the innovation and the products can be tested in a real environment and then being commercialized wider into Europe and the world. Of course, there's a significant difference between Helsinki and most of the cities in Europe. That is that Helsinki's responsibilities are much wider. We're responsible for things that are usually in Europe on a regional level or even on national level. We're responsible for education at the university level, most of the healthcare, and at the same time, City of Helsinki still owns things like energy company and one of the biggest harbors in Europe, which we also try to use as platform for innovation. And instead of just waiting for innovation to happen, to take a really active part in the ecosystem and in creating open innovation, the role of the city has to be something very different than it used to be. So what we see is that we take multiple roles in enabling and even driving innovation. One of them, very often forgotten, is that we are a very neutral operator. We don't have usually a business interest in single company or single technology. So we can be the one that connects academia and different kinds of companies and brings them together. Second, of course, we are very often enabler. We offer the test beds and testing opportunities. We also drive innovation. We offer innovation fund. City of Helsinki has had an innovation fund for over 10 years. So far spent over 40 million euros for different kinds of innovative projects within city organization or in the wider ecosystem. Our city organization does a lot of R&D. For example, the Helsinki Energy Company is one of the most R&D intensive energy companies in Europe. Testing, developing a lot of vanguard technologies are not yet commercially viable, but they still test them. Sometimes also with the regulation. Companies don't like regulation, but sometimes regulation is a great tool for creating innovation. You force companies to adapt into a new kind of an environment. Of course, we look at the ecosystem. If we see that we miss something very important from the ecosystem, we can build it or attract actors to build it. For example, last few years we've been building a place called Maria 01, which is one of the biggest startup hubs or incubators in Europe, run by private or people who come from private companies, but simply enable. They're a lot better at actually managing what happens in there, but we just enable it and make it happen, or help make it happen. We run a think tank, which is called Forum Virium, roughly 50 people, just purely focusing on digital innovation and creating digital platforms in the city. It's one of the European forerunners in urban open data and IoT solutions. And one very interesting tool we use is called the quick experimentation programs. All of our divisions make calls for new innovations. Small companies to come and show their product. So this year we tested 50 or 60, last year we tested 50 or 60 different kinds of technologies and solutions from small startups. If all goes great, we get a great view on what's happening in the ecosystem, what are the new technologies. We can then proceed with a big procurement, or we can say to the company, nice idea, didn't work, go innovate something else. It's a great tool for developing ecosystem.
Yeah, I really suggest to go through the initiatives incubated in the Forum Virium, which is one of the most interesting platforms that we have in Europe, in terms also of support to startups, innovators using open data. So it's something really, really interesting and inspiring for other cities too. But the support of the European Union is decisive to foster innovation in cities. I asked to Fabrizio Colimberti to tell us more about how this support evolved in the last few years in the framework of different programs such as Horizon 2020, GPI Urban Europe, and how this framework will be included in the next programming period.
Hello. Thank you, first of all, for the invite. Thanks to EUROCITIES and the Chamber of Commerce. Yes, indeed. The thinking is evolving, and we are at a watershed moment as the next framework program for research innovation was approved last week. So in my presentation, I will talk about two things. First of all, the work that we are doing at the Directorate General for Research and Innovation on what innovation in cities will mean in the next, say, 5 to 10 years. And then second of all, what it means for the next framework program, which is Horizon Europe, which is the continuation of Horizon 2020, which I'm sure you're all somewhat familiar with. So I think the reflection so far today shows how difficult innovation is. We all know this. How complex the challenges we have in Europe and globally, small cities, large cities. Don't forget that we as Commission, we care for the best in class. Some of the people are sitting at this panel. We also care for much smaller cities and more different realities. So what we are doing at the moment is working with a high level of external experts to define what innovative cities for the future can mean in innovation and how to support that. The challenges, we know them, first of all, listening to citizens more and more, quite simply, continue listening to business industry, and understand what are the choices we're facing. Second of all, the negative impacts, whether they're from climate change or globalization or societal changes. So what we have done is last year we started a long journey which will help us formulate this strategic research and innovation agenda. Why we need that is quite simple. In Horizon 2020, 3.1 billion euros went to city projects, went to municipalities essentially. In the next framework program, there will be even more funds, most likely. So we conveyed a number of experts, basically trying to put together the various fields from mobility, energy efficiency, climate change, inclusion, innovation, and so on. The report has been presented last week at the European Parliament, at least the draft of the report, which I'll show in a second. Very, very important for us to recognize that the landscape, and I think this was touched upon in the keynote speeches, the landscape is very fragmented. This makes it all very, very difficult, from the Paris Agreement, UN actions, to the Sustainable Development Goals, to the Goal 11, which is one of the guiding principles we're following. We also have a number of more bottom-up initiatives from Fab cities and Fab labs and so on. And we have some coordinated actions by cities in Europe, which 10 years ago, the Covenant of Mayors, for example, were to some extent much newer. And we have very strong networks like EUROCITIES, which is helping us. We had two people which helped craft the report. Cecilia from EUROCITIES a few moments ago was mentioning Charles Landry, which is the madman, in a very positive way, that leads the movement for the creative bureaucracy, and which has helped shape the report. The approach that has been undertaken is basically the one to shift to a human-centered city. Essentially, this means one thing. It's basically putting the individual at the center of any actions that guides innovation. And we believe it's quite an interesting way and very useful way to move past the, let's call them trends, of talking about green cities 15 years ago, smart cities 25 years ago, artificial intelligence and other trends, which is very, very important today. And this probably, we hope, will guide us towards a more horizontal and all-encompassing approach. there are two critical issues which have been set at the very center, at the very heart of the report. And they're related to urban infrastructure. The first is decarbonization, taking into account the 1.5 maximum global temperature increase. And the second is circularity and sharing. The Commission is promoting very, very hard a bio-circular approach to economy. This means, very practically, that the strategic priorities, and I know this is getting very, very theoretical, I can read it on your faces, but this is what will help us writing the calls for the projects for which you will apply for. So this is why I'm showing this to you. This means that there will be a number of priorities. Building resilience, I think the JPI, Urban Europe, talks about robust cities. We want to future-proof them. People were talking about skills within the public administration without, for example. A lot will be about institutional capacity and stuff and how to engage citizens, which is also one of the trends that within Horizon have been growing over the years. Prosperity is what we think of when we think of city riches, in a way that putting the individual at the center gives the opportunity not only to talk about business per se, but also talk about the sort of more creative, cultural, the distribution of opportunities, trying to allocate more fundings to the way that the influx of migrants, refugees comes into a city. And then finally, governance is another very important aspect. Again, I think this is very solid in a way in Horizon 2020. There is a lot of talk about co-creation. There is a lot of talk about experimenting governance models, and I think some of the previous speakers talked about their experience in this regard. Connecting to public innovation movements is something that I think we will be looking at more and more. And then finally, hopefully, the idea of measuring impact and moving beyond GDP. So really looking at how individuals can be fulfilled, can fulfill themselves within cities.
Could you just briefly explain what you mean by connect public innovation movement?
Yes, it means that there are a lot of grassroots movements, the Fab City manifestos and so on. One of the logics of the report is there is a lot of things happening, sprawling here and there in Europe, 100 resident and globally, 100 resident cities, for example, covenants. So I think the great challenge which we have as Commission, and that you have as cities, is to bring these movements together, is to make sure that whatever model you propose comes to us and is something that can be looked at together, as opposed to a fragmentation that is natural because all these initiatives, ideas are to some extent bottom up. So the idea is that we will try to help support that sort of, if you want, rationalization in a way. I already touched upon Horizon Europe, and I think I already spoke too long, but one important point from this, the R&I actions, research innovation actions in the urban field will be funded across the board from many different pockets of Horizon. Expect a lot from the Cluster 4 Climate, Energy and Mobility. This is different from Horizon 2020, where I think mobility and climate were disjoint. And then do expect to hopefully see a more integrated approach between various disciplines. And finally, help us. This is a classic call for help, which I think it's our duty to do. In the past, Horizon 2020 has followed sometimes too much top-down approach, in the sense that we have wrote, I see some people nodding, we have wrote things, we have wrote calls for which we thought this is what could be good for cities, this is what the future, how we read the future. The idea for Horizon Europe is to have a more participatory process, and I will talk about that in a second in the panel.
Thank you so much, Fabrizio. So it's great to hear that in the economic period the attention on cities will be higher and higher, but the attention on people is the most interesting thing that is defining the future framework for cohesion policy, and I think also for research and development policy. Javier Gomez, you studied strongly smart specialization and you're working on it with Joint Research Center. How smart specialization is contributing to differentiate the local ecosystems and why it's a relevant opportunity for our cities?
Thanks, Simone, and thanks to the colleagues of EUROCITIES for organizing this wonderful workshop. Grazie mille anche ai colleghi di Firenze, bella Firenze come sempre. I'm going to explain about the activity of my unit, the Joint Research Center, basically in the framework of cities from the territorial development point of view, and also regards to smart specialization. So before going to the smart specialization, I've been asked to tell some arguments explaining why we should develop local ecosystems for the promotion of innovation. And I think that one of the key arguments is actually knowledge. The graph actually shows how at the JRC we work as a scientific service of the European Commission by providing policy advice to the progress of several policies, like, for example, agriculture, energy, cohesion policy, and so on. So it is true that we are in a modern days in which information and data is really abundant, but we have to move up in the pyramid towards actually capturing what is knowledge. And you see that actually at the JRC, for example, there is a lot of interactions with several stakeholders and policymakers, and our key challenge is actually to manage that knowledge. And I think this is pretty much what is happening or what should happen thanks to local innovation ecosystems, because the knowledge can come not only from public administration, not only from universities or research centers, but also from citizens. So I think that policymakers should promote inclusiveness in the way of addressing innovation, participatory approach, and obviously governance. My colleague Fabrizio referred that before. So concretely speaking, in the issue of cities, these are the two of the main latest activities in our unit. The first one is the flagship report called The Future of Cities. This has been actually a very interactive way of working with not only colleagues of the Commission, but also other stakeholders. For example, just at the JRC, we have engaged about 11 working groups on actually taking what is happening in terms of research for illustrating what is happening in the cities. And we do that actually through the community of practice. That is through co-creation processes, working together as, for example, what we are doing or what we are going to develop in the afternoon, because that is the main input for the activities. So this is the example of how we interact with the production of the flagship report of the Community of Cities. This report will be available in June, we expect. And you can see that there has been a lot of interactions. And the same, obviously, when you develop local ecosystems for innovation, should apply engaging as many as possible actors to capture actually the most of knowledge. This is the flagship report. In this report, you will find the cities studied from different angles, from the perspective point of view, from the challenges. There is a chapter particularly addressing the issue of innovation. Innovation that actually we should consider in a very broader way than technological one, because innovation can be applied at social levels, innovation in the procedures, innovation in public administration, and so on. And yeah, this has been a very collaborative approach, and I expect that you interact with us, because there will be, apart from the report, there will be a virtual portal in which we can actually enrich the contents of this report. And the idea is to become a urban observatory. So this is another subproduct of the actually the Knowledge Center of Territorial Policies. Through this Stratboard tool, we develop analysis of more than 1,000 strategies for urban development across Europe. And here you can have a lot of information, like, for example, funding or specific investments in issues like innovation, or elements like smart specialization as well. And actually, talking about smart specialization, my unit has vast experience in promoting the discovery of innovation at regional level. Toscana, for example, has been a very active region in the activities we promote. We have a platform reference for interactions and for the promotion of peer learning activities among the regions. And it appears because even for those who are not familiar with smart specialization, here we don't talk about actually the smart side as a technical one, like smart cities or smartphones or smart whatsoever. But smart is more from the sense of the policy point of view, from how you address policies for the promotion of innovation. It's been very massive application of smart specialization, because there has been regulation behind of the cohesion policy that actually pursues that all the regions implement a strategy of smart specialization. And it's smart because actually you are not investing in everything. You have to concentrate efforts and investment in specific elements. You have to do it through inclusive processes. You have to do it by establishing dialogue with several actors. And decisions should be taken perhaps in a more slow process, but more effectively. And specialization, because actually you specialize in the niches of innovation that have been discovered in the local territories or in the regions. And I would say also, before the professor was telling about the competition among cities in the world, but I would raise also the issue of cooperation, because applying the logic of smart specialization, the more you specialize are in a region, the more need for cooperating with others. And we apply also in our methodologies our way of working with the regions, global value chains approach. So the idea is to specialize in something, to discover niches of innovation with your own resources, but also to connect these specializations with other peers, not only in Europe, but also in the world. And that's it.
Thank you, Javier. So we saw that so much is happening in Brussels, so much is happening in our cities, but I asked to all the speakers, what are the most relevant changes that we saw in the last 5-10 years to local innovation strategies, and how these strategies will change in the medium, long term, so in the next 10-15 years? I ask you to keep your answers in 1 minute so we can have more exchanges and leave also some space for the questions from the audience.
We consider big data and digital tools an important instrument that local innovation strategies began to explore in the last years. Public administration is going more and more digital day by day, and thanks to open data, for example, it's now possible in Florence to know in real time how many people are in a specific area in that moment, allowing policymakers to guide our visitor toward less congested areas. On medium-long term, I expect that strategies using the source of big data will be implemented based on an ethical value responding to the citizen needs with the respect of privacy indication. Concerning the digitalization of public administration, I predict an expansion of the network of the so-called digital trainers. For example, in Florence, we have started some trainers in order to be inclusive and to give everyone the possibility to take advantage of the innovation we promote. And so we have activated a training course aimed in particular at newsstands and local pharmacies for the use of digital tools offered by the municipality of Florence and Tuscany region. So we are working on the creation of a new digital newsstand. In a time where the newspaper crisis forced these places to rethink their identity, we imagine the newsstand as a service center to respond to the needs of citizens in a widespread manner.
Thank you. André?
I think what has changed over the last 5 to 10 years is really that now the cities and public actors in the cities are considered as legitimate to talk about innovation and to play a role in coordinating the different stakeholders, which was not maybe the case in the past. So I think it's a good achievement. And then what has changed also for us is that now we are quite clear about the sectors where we want to intervene, as I mentioned before. So the challenge now will really be to implement all this, and I would like to highlight one particular element, which is the link with universities and higher education. Because there again, in France at least, cities usually are not seen as actors that are working with higher education or financing higher education. So our mayor made a commitment to double the funding for the university in the city of Nantes and higher education, even if it's not our main competence according to national laws, because we really think that we need to work with higher education, and this additional funding helped us really to create more links, because we conditioned it in the fact that we want to work more on innovation with these different actors. And in particular, our university and higher education experts are quite strong in the field of social skills and management about how to implement innovation. We don't think that we can only contribute on the technical side, on the digital elements, but we really would like to see what is the human side of all these innovations. And we have a lot of resources in the academic sector in Nantes, so it's really about how we can establish this link and make also academics change their mindsets and think that they are not only there in order to do excellent research, but also to see how it can be really embedded in the local ecosystems.
Thank you. Santtu?
As we are apparently competing on innovation, I'm not sure I should tell you, but I think one of the biggest changes, at least in Helsinki, is if you look at from 10 years to now, is the role of innovation in the city strategy. 10 years ago, it really wasn't there. It was in economic development strategy, but not on the actual city strategy. 5 years ago, we started pushing the idea of the city as a platform and city as an innovation enabler towards the city strategy. In the new city strategy from about a year ago, it is now one of the core elements of the whole city strategy, the whole city as a platform for innovation. So that I think is very important change, and I think we've all heard the meme or the quote that culture eats strategy for lunch, and certainly does in cities. 5 years, 6 years ago, if we approach our different divisions and say, we would like you to test this one, or would you be willing to talk with this company on how their product would fit in your division? It was usually, no, it's expensive, can't really happen, maybe some other time. It wasn't really part of the culture. Now we're actually approaching a situation that we have, the divisions are too interested in doing innovation, we have far too many companies approaching us, and we are now starting to be swamped in the process. So it's really become part of the culture. And I think it's the most important part, because it doesn't, if you're writing a strategy after the strategy, it takes 10 years to actually make it a culture. That I think is the biggest change. The other thing which we are now doing on the strategy level is more focusing on development ecosystem. No, I don't mean the whole city as an ecosystem, but more like technological ecosystem. So instead of a pilot or a test on a single technology, we try to combine a lot of different technologies and different pilots and also citizen interaction into bigger platforms. For example, there was in the professor's presentation, there was the Muji autonomous bus in Helsinki. That is a really nice single technological test. But what we're actually doing is that we are are building an urban mobility lab which encompasses autonomous vehicles, 5G solutions, urban sensors, air quality sensoring, simulation models, and citizen interaction for creating new kinds of products. So bundling, creating, because exploring a single technology is super difficult. You need more of an ecosystem that can create a real product and then export it. The third one is, I think, very interesting is the global realization that cities are or can be key players in local and even in global innovation. We see a lot more big corporations approaching cities to try to build cooperation, but also cities are now building networks of innovation. For example, in Finland, the core one is which we call the 6-city strategy. It is basically 6 biggest cities in Finland cooperating, creating projects and innovation platforms to grow scale, to create bigger markets for innovations and new products.
Thank you. Fabrizio?
It's very hard to follow André and Santtu because they both said very, very right things.
You have 1 minute, so think about it.
Well, luckily they said lots of great things, which I completely agree with. I hear, still today, innovation is the poor child of the family, and yes, 10 years ago didn't exist. Today, in some Nordic cities, it is more ingrained, it's in the culture. In some other cities, I'm afraid it's still not. What I think for the future, the way to try to bridge that gap is possibly to focus on the social dimension of innovation. And that is both looking at the third sector, somebody was talking about the social dimension in that way earlier today, but also at the social impact. Don't get me wrong, new technologies are absolutely important, absolutely essential. Blockchains can do marvelous things from large cities and very small cities. But I was talking the other day to the innovation officers of a very large and very rich cities in Western Europe, which were telling me we had this wonderful strategy for having shared bicycles paid by the municipality. We put lots of money into that, lots of time and resources, and now we have a lot of corporates and banks and what have you that do the same thing. The issue is how are we going to be able to foresee that development in the future so that we put our money and resources in the right channel.
Thank you. Javier?
In terms of changes, I would highlight the easy and rapid access to information and communication technologies as a positive way to see actually what is happening in other places. We co-authored and studied actually social innovation recently, and there is an issue when you address innovation. You cannot pretend that innovation be a similar element happening in all territories. Each territory has to apply actually their own dynamics and interaction with local actors. And, this is an element also of identity that actually can link or can be linked with, for example, creative industries and things like that. And in terms of challenges, I would say that it is interesting to see also from the research point of view how to measure innovation, because just talking about social innovation, you mentioned, for example, that you organize hackathons, that perhaps the way you organize hackathons in your city is not the same that organizing hackathons here in Florence. So we should play with that and to put the research eye and to advise policies accordingly.
Thank you, but in view of the next programming period, what cities need from European Union and how European Union can help cities in delivering integrated local innovation strategies? We see 1 minute.
We expect from Europe support for actions towards cities' sustainability, to funding assistance, action, fostering a dialogue among European citizens to provide opportunities for cooperation, thus implementing networking actions. we just heard yesterday that we won an Interreg Europe project on crafts, about crafts, and we applied for this project just because, as you know, Florence is famous all over the world for our craftsmen, for our artisans, and we are applying also to be a UNESCO Creative Cities for Artisans. But we applied this project in order to discover, to face a very important problem, that is the risk of the disappearance of these crafts, of the old techniques that made Florence famous all over the world. For this, we applied in order to face and to discover new techniques that can innovate this sector and that can explore the contamination between the new technologies and the techniques used by the artisans. So they need to be helped in this new world and also in new markets. For this example, we are sure that this project can help our cities and our small and medium enterprise to find a new way to also to support their products and to innovate their techniques.
André?
Yes, I think that what we expect from the European Union is really to be involved, as you mentioned, even more upfront in defining the new projects and the new research programs, because it's very important that we can not only reply to public tenders, but that we can influence them from the very beginning. And I think we are on the right way right now, and EuroCities has done a lot in order to strengthen us and to give us more voice from the very beginning. And maybe the other expectations we could have as cities is also about helping us to consider the investments we make in these kind of innovation projects compatible with the budgetary rules we have in the European Union, because we can see also that more and more also from our national governments we have a lot of pressure about how much we can spend, and sometimes, for example, in Nantes we have a very sound financial situation. But nevertheless, we are asked to be very careful about what we invest and so on. And of course, the European Union could help us maybe to say that all the investments we make in this kind of innovation projects can be seen as something different and not fall under the budgetary lines. This can be important as well. And so the last expectations, it's maybe about making it even more easy to get access to the funding, and also to have this direct relation between the cities and the European funding, because as we all know, the fundings go through the nation states and then the regions and then the cities, so it makes the process also very complex. And in the field of innovation, we have to be even more reactive than on other projects, I think. So I think this is also something which can be improved in the future.
Thank you. Santtu?
A lot of great things already been said in this one. I think one of the biggest things for EU is to actually recognize the role of the cities in innovation. In my opinion, EU is still pretty much based on regions or even nation states. I would really like to see the creation of city-specific instruments, and also, of course, this direct dialogue with cities would be really important, because currently, as has been said, the funding application and policy is done by regions and even nation states, and if you look at the cities versus nations, there are a lot of things where they are disagree on what should be done, especially in innovation. Another thing is, of course, if you look at just funding, is the long-term funding. If you look at the curse of the EU funding is that you make streams of 2 or 3 year projects, but if you look at ecosystem development, a decade is a very short time. And we've seen, I think, and all of us have seen, that we create a great project and we put it up, and in 3 years it dies, and then we start again. Well, we should look in the long term. Of course, then there's the question of innovation, which is, in a sense, is messy and unpredictable. EU funding tends to be rules and rules and more rules. And that was very difficult. We've had some very weird experience with EU funding, for example, having schools which are really great innovation platform in Helsinki, and we use them for testing new technologies. And we had a question, well, this is great project, and you're doing just the right thing with the companies. But someone is learning here. You can't use this instrument for learning. You need a different instrument for learning. So then we had to build another instrument. And then, yeah, but you can't do any investments on this one, even on small technology or something for teacher. Okay, then we bundled a third project on that one. So it became a very complicated process. One thing, and I'm from economic development, I really don't like regulation in a sense, usually. But regulation is something where EU as a whole should cooperate and work, especially on disruptive technologies and, for example, on data. I don't mean that we should say no to new technologies or new business ideas like Uber or so on, but we would need to regulate and make demands of what are terms and how they can operate. Simply, for example, if you look at case Uber, give us your data. We need to see where you're operating, what kind of volumes you're operating on. So that would be something where we need EU-wide policies to actually to have leverage against the big global companies.
Fabrizio,
Yes, I'll turn the question around and sort of say...
what do you expect from cities?
Exactly, from the EU. So the first thing and most important is let's say to engage all levels anyhow you can. European elections, 23, 26 May, vote and get people to vote. However they vote, it's important, I believe, to have as wider participation as possible. The second is, again, related to research and innovation funding, which is what I'm representing. And we are about to announce a big event in Brussels, 24 to 26 September, which is going to be called European Research and Innovation Days, which will have the usual, if you want, policy discussions, marketplace, and so on. But the ambition that we have is also to open the floor to the strategic programming discussions about Horizon Europe. It's basically a forum in which to involve member states and other partners in help us set the lines that will be used for the research innovation funding programs. More of that should come in the coming weeks, and we will be confirmed. Last, in terms of funding, there is a very long discussion. Horizon 2020 is already simpler than FP7. Yes, believe it or not. And we're doing our best to make sure that Horizon Europe will be even better. One program that I recommend is the European Capital of Innovation. Is an action that I will talk about over lunch, and I'm talking about that because colleagues were talking about the difficulty of reporting about funds and using funds, and that is because you have member states on your back, and we need to make sure the funds are well used. We all know this. But the European Capital of Innovation is great because it's money that comes with no strings attached. It's a prize that you win and you use how you want. It's based on trust towards the cities. So I encourage everyone who's interested in this to follow me at lunch.
Javier?
Yes, I was explaining at the beginning of my presentation, I work mostly for the Knowledge Center of Territorial Policies. And like this knowledge center, the GRC holds 6 different knowledge centers. And actually, a common aspect of the functioning of these knowledge centers is co-working, co-creating processes with regional and local stakeholders. So actually, that is an invitation for representatives of cities here to come to us and co-develop things. As an example, we are developing a process with Amsterdam City. I don't know if there's somebody here in Amsterdam, about studying specific aspects of housing and affordability of housing and links with financial instruments at the time of addressing housing. So we provide data analysis stuff, we co-organize workshops and things like that, and the results are important not only for Amsterdam but also for other cities. and we can reply the activity there. We also, from the smart specialization side, for example, in 2017 we organized an innovation camp, which is a specific methodology to address specific challenges in regions. And out of that activity, actually, there has been a project proposal that at the end was accepted by colleagues of Interreg Europe. And this is happening also in the framework of our activity. So we provide this kind of cooperative and learning frameworks, and again, an invitation for that. And finally, about the urban aspect in Europe, I would say there are efforts for projecting the activity, the urban activity, even beyond the EU borders. Now there is a project called IUC, International Urban Cooperation. It's taking place with several areas of the world, like United States, India, Latin America. And innovation is a key element in this cooperation. So the launch of frequently calls, I can talk to whoever be interested later on that. But to say that there is activity, key activity putting the urban aspect at the center of collaboration. And finally, for the next programming period, at least from the cohesion policy, urban aspects will be a key element established as a policy objective, one of those 5 policy objectives to be addressed in the period 2030-2027. So hopefully there will be more activity in urban aspects also from the cohesion policy point of view. Thanks.
Thank you, Javier. Basically, confirming the slide is not working, so we will go back to the hold matters for questions from the audience. I don't know if there is any question. There is a microphone somewhere. Okay. The good result. So, Pietro, maybe take the microphone. I don't know if there is any question. Please don't be shy.
Good morning, my name is Eric from Twente. I have a question in regard to cities. If we want to make a stronger hand towards the European Commission, is it maybe not time as EUROCITIES that we have a clear definition of what is a city in fact? Is it only a legal entity, or can we make it more broader if you look in terms of connection with other regions, cities? Are we only a government entity? That's what I would like to know. And maybe a second thing, if we talk about new technologies, maybe we have to turn it over. What are the real challenges in society, and what technologies could help us?
Who want to answer first? Maybe André?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Of course, I'm not able to reply directly, but it reminds me on an initiative that we are running in Nantes about more social innovation. We have created a platform for social innovation, and we bring together different stakeholders, and we have created indeed identity for this platform that is independent from the city. So even in terms of logo and brands, and when we implemented this, we had to struggle a little bit because some colleagues from the city said, well, it's the city, the government that is funding the project, that is managing the whole project, but I said that if we want to involve all the different stakeholders, business networks, NGOs, trade unions and so on, it's very difficult for some of them to say that they are under the umbrella of a public institution that represents the city, and said that innovation in particular, it's something which is shared among the different stakeholders. So we have actually created this new identity, and sometimes it's this identity where we have an own governance, where each of the different partners has one voice, and several times when I made suggestions, me as the vice president of the city, we lost the vote, and so we didn't implement the decision. So it's really a new way also for us as a city government to take our responsibilities and to see our role. And sometimes it's now this new entity, this platform, that is partner in events or other policies, and we can even think about creating maybe a legal structure for this kind of platform that could maybe even apply for some funding from the European Union in the future. So I think it's a good question that we have to discuss in this forum and maybe also in the other forums about who represents the city, what are the cities, because we need to involve, of course, all the different actors and not only the city government that can speak in the name of all the other stakeholders. Yes.
Who wants to add? Right, or please maybe another question?
Ulrike is my name, City of Gothenburg, and I have a question to Santtu. You talked a lot about regulations with different angles. In the beginning you said that regulations are a great tool for innovation. I would like to say a few more words on that, because regulations can change very easily, whilst there have been investments made for innovation. So explain a little bit more, please.
Okay, it's as I said, I really don't usually like regulation. They make the economic development usually quite difficult. But there are cases and places where you can actually use regulation push towards innovation. For example, if you ban use of fossil fuels in the city centre, you will have a large number of companies who need to invent then a new way of approaching the city, whether it's biofuels, whether it's electric vehicles and so on. We have also tested, for example, because the city of Helsinki is a big landowner, setting specific zoning rules of certain buildings. And yes, this plot is for sale, you can compete for it, but it's not only funding price or the monetary price, you will need to do X, Y, and Z on this plot, which are usually things, for example, relating to carbon neutrality or other things that actually then become ways of promoting innovation. On the other side of the regulation, I think one of the biggest challenges in innovation policies of cities is, so far, at least on my job, I'm trying to promote new innovations. But I think one of the challenges for all cities in Europe and the world is going to be which innovations to adapt and how to regulate new kinds of innovations. We need to have new kind of innovation policy, which is more about scanning, trying to adapt, learning from each others on which kinds of regulations or ways of working with innovation and companies, how they work. For example, it was really eye-opener for me a few weeks ago when I was in New York, where they got Uber. And they got really big challenges with Uber. One, because they used to have the taxi token, 14,000 taxis, and that was the cap in Manhattan. You can have 14,000 taxis. They cost $1 million to get the taxi firm. Well, now you got Uber. Most of the taxi drivers are in financial struggles because the token is worthless. But the bigger problem is that now they have no control of the amount of Ubers on the streets, which led to the fact that there are a lot more cars on the street, a lot more traffic congestion. Ubers don't like parking because parking is expensive, so the Ubers just drive circles around the blocks. So it is a place of learning for all of the other cities. When the Uber is coming, what kind of regulations do you have? Do you ask for data? Do you ask, do you make some kind of agreement with the company saying that you can have only X amount of cars on X plot, because they do have the data. They know exactly where the cars are at what point. And this, I think, is very big thing for the future of innovation. It's part regulation, but it's also understanding all of these innovation projects and how they might disrupt the local cities and how we could react.
One more question. Cecilia.
I'm Cecilia from EUROCITIES. I had a question. I like the introduction that we had from Helsinki, where innovation, it was defined as based on high-quality education, trust, and equality. And in the keynote presentation before, we had many examples of innovation taking place in the US, which has model that is very different from equality, trust, and high quality education for everybody. Would you say that this is going to be the European model for innovation in cities? And is there still something we can learn from cities in US, which in some way there seems to be more innovative than European cities?
Horribly difficult question. I think all states, cities, states, and even EU needs to find its own strategy. We cannot compete on same strengths and models that US is, or even China, which can be superbly efficient in innovation, simply because of the scale and amount of people and because you can actually enforce the policies. So I think all of the cities and states in Europe need to find their own solution. The model that is based on education equality works very well in Finland because it's very small, quite sparsely populated country. We need to use all of the assets, all of the talent we have. If you look at US, I think US is a different kind of story. Instead of, of course, there's not single United States, there's a bunch of states, very different ones. And if you look at the very innovative places in the United States, it is actually quite small areas that are the places that have been managed to drag in all of the talents from the rest of the US or in one part of Europe or China and India. So what US model is great is in commercializing the technology and the innovation. The way entrepreneurial model is very different. If you look at Finland, one of our biggest challenges is actually commercializing the technology. A few months ago, I looked at the new statistics. Finland ranks #1 and #2 in fintech technologies in the world. The early phase of innovation, what we patent and what we create. If you look at where we suck, where we are very bad, is actually commercializing the technology. That is something that the United States is great at. So I think we need to learn from them, but I don't think we can adapt or use the US model as it is.
I just have a question for Mr. Colimberti, because I was shocked by the amount of innovation that the report that you basically unveiled is going to bring. One remark that you made was about the role of financial institutions and how to bridge this kind of human-centered and social model of innovation with the role of financial institutions. And the other thing is, how will Horizon Europe interact with the other funding programs like InvestEU, which of course is a guarantee model, but it has, particularly in some of its strengths, addresses some of the same challenges when we speak about sustainable infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and even social infrastructure, which are kind of one of the aims that you mentioned in your presentation. Thank you.
So, very good questions. On the interaction between the different type of EU fundings, indeed, there are overlaps. We all know that. There are overlaps in names sometimes with urban innovative actions and innovation actions and from Horizon and so on. I think little by little things are being rationalized in the sense that under Horizon at least we will have a sort of more organic pool of proposals. Things will not always will not be rationalized under one umbrella. I don't think that will happen. I think there are political considerations there. And I think if you want, there also is the way of interacting with a very fragmented landscape, in the sense that what happens very often is that the Commission champions one thing or the other based on input which comes from different parts. The result, if you want, which is positive is that you have more funding opportunities. Of course, from a sort of rationalization point of view, it's not ideal. I completely get that. Talking about finance for innovation, I think the idea is that, I'll give you an example. I was talking about the European Capital of Innovation in 2016 was won by Amsterdam. We all know why Amsterdam may win a title about innovation. Last year in 2018 was won by Athens. That's not technological innovation, that's social innovation. Athens has done marvelous things based on basically putting people in a room and having them interact. So the idea is to incentivize that sort of third sector, bottom-up way of creating innovation. I'll give you another example. We have a number of technology prizes within Horizon, which are inducement prizes that were mentioned earlier today. There is one which was just closed about mobility of older people in urban environments. The winners, I believe, will be announced in September within the same EURNI days. So yes, the idea again is to sort of, there will be more funding. Horizon has been doubled in terms of size. There will be more going to third sector and sort of non-traditional financial opportunities.
Thank you. Fabrizio, to close the session, I really ask in a minute just to the city representatives to tell us which is the innovation story happened in your city, just shows that cities are fundamental to foster innovation. So that impressed you most in the recent years. Inspire us with.
Okay. I have in mind two recent urban regeneration projects that, in our view, are changing and innovating the image of Florence together with its lifestyle. I'm talking about the student hotel, a space you will discover tomorrow, and also the old Manifattura Tabacchi that I invite you to visit during your time here in Florence. The once abandoned Manifattura Tabacchi is a monumental space where once tobacco was produced. It's now slowly transforming itself thanks to a strong collaboration between public and private bodies. And so now it's a cluster of aggregation open to all, a new opportunity for the cities. So it's a space for events, it's a meeting space for the neighborhood where participative workshops take place. And it's also an art space, and it's going to be the third educational playground for Polymedia Fashion School. This is a project that is growing together with the neighborhood, not something finished that people happen to find in their cities. I'm convinced that cities need to move towards more indigenous approach and to support new economies from the bottom up.
Thank you, André.
It's difficult, of course, to choose one example, but maybe I'm going to talk about the sailing lab that we are going to create. We have a city lab that is quite similar to what has been presented in the keynote speech. So we offer, of course, our city as a place where innovations can take place, and we want to do the same thing now on the Loire River because we want to highlight the fact that we are linked to the water. And as I said, the maritime sector, it's one of our strategic sectors because we think that there are a lot of changes regarding transport, but also leisure and so on. And so we now work together with the region on creating a sailing lab where different kinds of innovators can test their new uses, their innovations on the Loire River and then going up to the Atlantic Ocean as well. So maybe I would like you to invite you to come to discover it, and if of course you have some ideas where you would like to test innovations related to water and the maritime sector, come to Nantes.
So we know where will be the next meeting of the EUROCITIES Forum. Last but not least, Santtu.
Same thing, that I'm not sure which would be the single project. There are so many different kinds of projects. For example, just on smart mobility, we have currently 60 or so different kinds of testing, pilot, and innovation projects. I think one of my favorites, which is still quite small because in scale and phase, is the 24/7 virtual home. It's basically, we have a challenge of a growing amount of elderly population. So what we have is that we have a virtual connection, basically a pad which means elderly people who live at home, if they, for example, middle of the night, feel anxious, feel sick, they don't feel well, can touch a pad, they can get real-time connection with a nurse. There's some possibility of getting telemetry so they can see the pulse, and so if there's a real emergency, they will call help. If it's not a real emergency, they can still arrange to meet a doctor the next day and tell how to meet there. And it's also now going to be a social network because it connects also the elderly people. There's people can do exercise, and so there's a lot of people connected at the same time. And it doesn't really replace traditional actual healthcare, but what makes it easier to reach in case of emergency or quite often just people are alone. So I think it's a great way of using technology to help people to live at home for a long time.
Examples very different from each other, but these are examples showing how innovation can have many faces and how innovation can really help to make the everyday lives of people better. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Now I think it's time for Alexander to tell us more about the innovations in the lab methodology that follow this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the speakers.